Hello AP Seminar students, I'm back to share with you a second solution from a top scoring IWA. This is an IWA that we reviewed in class. We called it IWA number 2, and it referred to the labor laws that apply to children that work in agriculture, that work in farms. So this writer wanted there to be changes to the laws regarding children working in agriculture. And this is how they begin their solution. It says, moving forward, how should the CLPAO be amended? The CLPAO should follow the precedent of the child labor provisions for non-agricultural occupations, comma, the strict law that governs child labor and jobs apart from agriculture. So please note right there that the writer gave us a highly technical, detailed law, and then the writer defined what that law was. So then the writer goes on to say, thus, regards to the age and time a child can work, youths below 14 years old would not be allowed to work, and youths between 14 and 18 years old would only be allowed to work for less than 3 hours a day during the school year. And then there's a citation there. They're citing an article. Notice the use of a transition here. Furthermore, children below 18 years old would not be allowed to operate hazardous tools. So again, there's that citation. So what are we looking at? This is highlighted in green. So it says it uses evidence from credible sources. So notice that what the writer said wasn't something the writer made up. The writer was referring to a source that he or she had read. We come back to the solution. It says these changes would reduce some of the health, personality, and education hazards that young children toiling in the fields are susceptible to. So that is highlighted in gray. And we remember that when something's highlighted in gray, it's the implications, the likely consequences. Consequences usually being positive. And what would happen in a positive way if we implemented this solution? So now we come on to the next paragraph, and it says, while the CLPAO needs to be changed, it's important to propose the change in a way that limits backlash in order to avoid a rerun of the failed 2011 amendment. So we come over to here. It is admitting limitations here. It says, look, we need to do this law in a way that's not going to have negative reactions. So the writer goes on and says, thus, proposers of this amendment should abide by the following advice given by Scott Heiberger, a communication specialist at the National Farm Medicine Center, when proposing the amendment to the federal government. Now we have a big block of text there highlighted in purple. We come over to our features. It says it contains specific details to show how the solution would actually work. Please notice too that it is citing this from Scott Heiberger, a communication specialist, the National Farm Medicine Center. And we could say that this too, although it's highlighted, it's not highlighted, this comes from a credible source. So let's look at these detailed, the details of this solution. First, the safety and health officials arguing for this amendment should act as a unified coalition, identifying what they agree on and speaking as one. This would emphasize the number of people supporting the change. Second, those writing the law should be explicit in their wording, since Heiberger points out that many of the farmers were opposed to the amendment in 2011 as they were concerned about the unintended consequences of the proposed rules. Being explicit would add clarity and garner support from some farmers. So when writers provide this level of detail, it shows that this solution is not one that the writer casually thought of. It's not one that is unrealistic, because the details show that this solution probably has a good chance of making a difference. So now we get down to something highlighted in blue, and when we come over to here, The features highlighted in blue are limitations. So it says, indeed, a limitation in this argument as a whole is that some states in the United States, such as Massachusetts and New York, have already imposed stricter in-state legislation to account for the deficiencies in the federal law. And we see that there's a citation there. This is the third time that this writer has cited evidence in this solution. So we remember solutions based on evidence are much more convincing than ones simply based on your own logic. We go on to a transition, nonetheless, meaning even so, or in spite of that, while this does reduce the scope of this paper, it is still important to change the federal law for two reasons. So we've got this highlighted in gray, and we know that the feature in gray are the implications. So the writer says, first, it would ensure that no state falls through the cracks. For example, many other major agricultural states like Illinois and Indiana currently do not have these additional state laws. Second, it would send a clear message to society that the federal government is against child labor in all industries. Thus, while this amendment may not affect the states that already have strict in-state laws about child labor and agricultural, it still should be passed. So please note the use of our transitions, first over here and second over here, and then we've got the word thus. Should be clear to you that someone writing a solution like this, by the end of the IWA process, you are very knowledgeable about your issue, and we can see that this writer is very knowledgeable about what he or she's writing about. So this solution ends now more than ever with over 70% of the United States workforce working in agriculture. There's a citation again. We must tackle this problem with urgency and efficiency. We must amend the CLPO in order to protect minors working on farms in the United States.